My name is Rahelio. I've been here in Sedona 31 years. My ancestry come out of Mexico. I consider myself a modern-day Toltec. Toltecs are wisdom keepers out of Mexico. I was born in the Midwest in the state of Iowa, but I left there when I was younger and traveled to California, spent a couple of years there, and also I spent maybe 6 years on Maui. I'm like a mystic or a shamanic guide. I've had a lot of mystical experiences when I was young especially, and I did a lot of research, a lot of study, so I could find understanding. That was my main thing, I wanted to understand. Within my ancestry, the native people here have been colonized and many have been assimilated into the dominant cultures. My ancestry came out of Mexico. When the European people came there, the Spanish people came there, like 90% of the people died off from sickness that they brought with them. So a lot of people had to assimilate to survive. And there are still native people living in the mountains and away from that new world that was created. And so some of the people have been able to maintain traditions. A lot of native people are very quiet. They don't speak, especially to non-Indian people. And there's also a lot of trust issues around. Like usually the people would just watch you. If you were come to the community, they would just watch you without opening up until they see who you are. Our minds are conditioned for certain parameters of what we can accept, and we get limited in our belief systems. And so as things come in and blow our mind, we begin to expand our understanding. So all my life I've been having my mind blown and pushed open to see the bigger picture. And as I see the bigger picture, then I want to simplify that picture. That's kind of like what they told me, was to speak of love and inspiration, because no matter what you know, if it doesn't come down to love, if it doesn't come down to a spiritual understanding of what love means, you miss the boat. Native people understand that the earth is living and that this energy that comes from, as she rotates on her axis, this life force goes through her body, through her power grids, through her meridians, her vortex sites. This energy goes up to the trees and the plants, and there's medicine in the life force of nature. And so everything you need is in the natural life, but especially in the plants. The plants will heal almost anything. Today we have all this like pharmaceutical drugs and a medical system that suppresses symptoms but does not heal the person. Whereas native wisdom is all about natural healing and living in harmony with nature. So, I've sought to embrace the teaching of live in harmony with Mother Earth and recognize that we're all connected. And the elders I've heard speak talk about having a voice for the animals and that they have souls also, and that we need to have respect for the natural world. It's like we're not here to dominate, we're here to find the balance with the natural order of things. So the Native American perspective has been a very important voice for me to embody within myself. But I've also had studied much with yoga philosophy, and I've been a professional astrologer 30 years. So I've studied a lot of the Western metaphysics, and I consider myself a Christian mystic. I've been initiated into Tibetan Buddhism. I like the teachings of depth psychology. I like the teachings of quantum physics, and I like the balance of science and shamanism. So I kind of weave it all together in a modern way. It's said that everything is mirroring, like the Earth has 7 continental chakras, Earth has acupuncture meridians, Earth is 2/3 covered by water. And you find a lot of the ancient temples as above, so below. So the Orion constellation, the belt stars, you see that in the Great Pyramids, the 3 pyramids of Egypt. That Orion constellation was laid down over northern Arizona. Some ancient Anasazi, Hopi sacred sites, they had built ceremonial centers. The Hopi mesas are the belt stars of Orion. So the people were building, especially in Mexico, they're building pyramid cities and they're mapping the stars. And this happened over Northern Europe also, it happens all over the world. Everything is mirroring, so in the same way the 4th dimension, the astral plane, is mirroring the higher ones too. So people can get a glimpse of those things in the astral plane, although it's not the real deal. Everybody wants to meditate like a Buddha and go into heightened consciousness, but then the chatter of the rational mind get in the way. And so in the Toltec wisdom, it teaches that we have to cultivate our energy so that we're awake, we have energy, and to learn how to master the mind so that the mind can become quiet. As the mind becomes quiet and the internal dialogue can stop, then you can get out of the rational description of the world. So when we stop that mind, and then from there, the dream mind can begin to awaken naturally, because this one becomes quiet. There's different energy practices, breathing practices, intention, the intent you hold as you breathe into your mind's eye, The male side is our rational mind. We all have to show up and do something in the world. We have to think and do and master the 3D world. So we're all anchored on our male side. And our thinking mind, can be a great master in our life, but it also has its limitations, in that we can sometimes rationalize and get stuck, talk ourselves out of our intuitive knowing. Like, I know I need to do this, and the rational mind talk us out. I know I should have done that, but I didn't listen to my own knowing. This is our female side. We all have a female side. The soul connects us to the feminine. Our tears are opening, so our magic happens here. As we move to the next cycle, we're going to move into our dream mind. It's going to be about everybody attuned that we're all connected. Your rational mind can understand that we are in a unified field, the way Einstein described everything's energy, and we're dancing in duality through the yin-yang, but it's all a unified field. Your rational mind can know that, but your rational mind cannot perceive that. Your dream mind can perceive that. The dream mind, everything is connected. When you're awake in a dream, it's like how awake we are now. It's more awake than here now. You're fully awake. It's quite incredible to be fully awakened and then come back down to being like a regular human being. A lot of people dismiss the dream mind, but all the great psychologists, you got Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, they work with the dreams to understand what's going on in a person's unconscious mind. For Native people, many Native people, medicine people are very good dreamers. They can dream out of the body and go and travel and visit places, and the capacity there itself to leave their body. And the dream realm is the gateway to the higher dimensions. There are different realms of beings that are living, but the dream mind also has its limitations. It's like people get involved with religious cults and they drink the Kool-Aid and they get disillusioned. They fall for a belief that's a false ideal. On the dream side, you can have fantasies and beautiful dreams. You can have nightmares. Here you can have beautiful life, but you can also have suffering and pain. So these two are brought with duality. So both sides have their limitations. But when the male and female come into balance within us, because we have to balance our rational mind with our dream mind. I learned that there's like 7 layers to each of the different dimensions. For the third dimension, we have these 7 chakras. Some people are living at their first chakra. They're at their survival level, and they don't trust in a lot of things. They're all about survival. Some people are in their second chakra, and they're just about hedonistic kind of a thing. They get their emotions and their passions and their feelings, and they're just all about their feelings and their creativity like that. Some people are living at their third chakra. They're trying to run the world. They're focusing their business and taking care of like that. Others are coming up with their heart chakra. They're living more care and compassion and social working and healers, etc. Some people are living more to their throat chakra. They have the power to express truth, teaching truths, and are singers and people using the power of their voice. And others are working at the third eye. They're like movie makers and film and video and visionary and artistic, and people are making these movies where they got a whole movie that, well, who could see that story? And they're working through their third eye. And those who are working through their crown chakras, those are people who are like the medicine people. So we all have those going, but some people are stronger at certain ones. So we have this physical body, and we have this physical realm, 3D. We have this dream realm, the 4th dimension, and it goes to our emotional body. We are shifting from a 3D world, begin to awaken to the 4th dimension over here through our dream mind. And then when we come into the higher level to balance these two sides, this connects us to the 5th dimension. The 5th dimension has to do with the mental body. Know the truth will set you free. When your mind is awakened, it's not in the fantasy of the astral. The astral plane is the 4th dimension. So the 5th dimension is when you come into direct awakening and see clearly what it is. It's all in the higher mind. How do we find happiness? How do we awaken? You find people going into prison that have been, whatever reason they've been put in prison, coming to a spiritual awakening because they're turning within, they're finding that time to connect with the Great Spirit. You find a lot of Native American people who are in prison, religious leaders and religious people can come in there and create sweat lodges where they can pray and to connect with their soul like that. So no matter what our condition, and sometimes the more oppressive it is, the more you can get to it. It's just a matter of your intent, that's what you want to do. When you're in the city, the collective mind of the city is kind of humming and buzzing there. So that's why people say, like, I need to take time out of the city and go to the mountains or to the ocean, because the energy of the earth is stronger there, the life energy is stronger, so I can connect with the power of the earth. Like a dream catcher, the spider web on the earth, when you go to those places, that's where you plug into the dream mind of the earth, because we are part of the earth's consciousness. So getting into nature, that's where you find, I think, our national parks are becoming so overrun with people. Everybody wants to go there. You go to the Grand Canyon, like, oh my God, wow, it all makes sense now. The moment of realization, like there is a higher guidance there, an intelligence behind everything that we think it's haphazard, but our fate is weaving. The universe is always knocking on our door, trying to guide us. And the medicine people, they recognize that, the shamanic people, they recognize that this is always speaking to us. The average person is oblivious of it, but then as they begin to awaken, they go like, wow, this coincidence, wow, things are starting to happen. Oh, the clock says 11:11. Oh, the clock says 3:33. Oh, I turned the radio on and it said something that what I needed to hear. Or there was a license plate and it's like, I needed to hear that. That, like, it spoke to me. They call that magical thinking. They go, oh, you're into magical thinking. And like, I think it was Einstein that said, whenever you're in a problem, the solution is not within the confines of that problem. You have to reach above it. So like, I'm trying to solve this problem. Well, let me go for a walk and let my intuition bring in. That's magical thinking, basically. So all the people who are stuck because they got that belief system, and when they begin to realize they're in a living universe and the earth is alive and the consciousness of Great Spirit is all around us and it's just waiting for us to begin to awaken up to it. All through history, mystics and shamans and saints have awakened to this direct presence. So Toltec wisdom is about mastery of intent. Intent is how you recognize what is right now. So like when you're in a ceremonial space, you're recognizing what you're thankful for right now. And you're recognizing that your breath is like, without this breath, I'm not alive. So this breath is my connection to this moment, to be alive. This is my connection to spirit. So you begin to master your breathing, you begin to recognize that as you intend it now in your mind. People will use affirmation and say, oh, I'm abundant and everybody loves me and my life is so great. But then their subconscious is saying, I don't deserve love, I hate myself, got poverty consciousness, and I'm fear-based. This unconscious program sabotages their intention. So the main thing is clearing the subconscious so that you can work with intent. I am that I am in perfect divine timing. The universe loves and supports me. I'm mastering my reality day by day, becoming more aware of the power of my true self. I'm aligned with Great Spirit. Great Spirit guides and inspires me, works through me. So intent like that is very important, but also it's very important just to do, just get it done. You see sports and the team will say, we're just taking what the defense gives us because we're trying to do our thing, but they're blocking us, but we're taking what they give us. That's like really a strategy of life. You have to take what life gives you. Trying to attain success, but it's blocking you, blocks. But where can I get in? That's basically how it works. When you find your avenue to get in and then you do the best you can without any attachment. In the Toltec wisdom, it speaks of 5 agreements. They correspond to the 4 cardinal directions. To be impeccable with your word, because your word makes manifest your reality. So your word, as you think it and then as you speak it, you begin to put it into motion. There's a saying, abracadabra. It means the same thing. I speak into manifestation my words. What happens is that most people speak into manifestation why they're not happy. Like if you see people and you work with people, they come to you when they're in their crisis. What often comes out of their mouth is like, I always fail this, this always goes wrong, this is always happening, this never works out. And they say that over and over. So they go like, wait a second, be aware of your thought. That you are saying, you're speaking this into reality. This is what has been in the past, but in order to change it, you gotta say, this has happened in the past. I'm becoming aware, I need to change that now. So once we become aware of our unconscious speaking patterns, then we can begin to speak that I'm in perfect divine timing. I'm manifesting abundance. I do the best I can do. When you speak positive words like, today we're going to be able to do this, and appreciate this what you do, and this is who you are. When we begin to speak positive words, it begins to lift each other up. So to be impeccable with your word, that's the beginning step, because it all starts with that. Your thought manifests as a word. To not take things personally, because people can project on each other their dramas. They can project their issues onto you. And so to not take things personally is about recovering the inner child. Because when you're young and you haven't been loved and accepted and recognized, and you grow up feeling like you're not enough, you're sensitive to people's criticism, you're sensitive to people's projecting on you, and you feel vulnerable because you're just trying to keep it together. So when you begin to heal yourself and whatever's going on outside you, that's not going to affect me because I'm staying strong in my center. Sometimes there's things going on around us that we are actually being responsible for. We're not recognizing that we're creating the problems, and so we need to change our behavior. I always say it's about not indulging in the ego, because when people get stuck in their stories, like, oh, this is my story, this is why I got hurt, this is why I act this way, and they start indulging in their ego story. Basic Buddhism, basic spiritual teaching that the ego is only a vehicle for us to work through. It's not who we are. This body is here for us to work through, but it's not who I am. But I need to take care of this body. This ego is a vehicle for me to express through, but it's not who I ultimately am. But it needs to be worked with and integrated. So that's the power of the South, the healing the inner child. So the teaching is to don't take things personal, because we're always trying to validate ourselves that we're good enough. Well, we don't need to do that. We can just be at peace with who we are. The next teaching goes to the West, and the West is about our relations with others, with life. It's a place of looking within. And so that one is don't make assumptions, because we're assuming that life is telling us this, but we have to take time to listen and to introspect and to really investigate what it is that we're encountering, so that we can be clear with our relationships. And it's kind of like people making agreements. They do a business together, and I thought you were saying this. No, I thought you said that. We were too busy in our own assumptions versus really listening and perceiving. So it has to do with the power of introspection and listening and reflecting upon what's really going on. In the North is about doing the best you can do and let the results go and surrender to the Great Spirit. In this way, it's like you do the best you can do and then you just let go. I did my best. So I gotta let go, and I have to take time off to be at peace with myself. That's a really important one for most people, because we get to working, we get to trying, and some people don't like their jobs, so they're just kind of doing halfway good. But if you do the best you can do, no matter what you're doing, it opens the frequency of that vibration opens the door for new success, because you're not attached to the results, you're connected to bringing down your higher self. It's kind of like climbing the mountain. You want to get to the top, but you got to take one step at a time. And sometimes you don't know where you're going, because how to get up there, but there's over there. You take what the mountain gives you, and you make your way to the top. That's kind of like a metaphor for attaining your goals at the top of the mountain. And the fifth agreement is in the center, because in the center is where you have these four directions, these four attributes, the sun in the four directions, awakening us in the east, put our roots down and master our everyday world in the south, the noonday sun, the sunset reflecting and introspecting, finding balance with relations. In the winter in the north, it has to do with awakening to our higher purpose, as far as our awakening wisdom, nature, and mastering our role in the world. Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. So the zodiac is a cycle of the mind also. And in the center, though, is where we have to come into our center, which is being at peace with ourselves. I've done my work, I'm in my center, I'm in my power. I'm not having to prove anything to anybody, I don't have to do anything, I'm just being. And no matter what I do, I'm holding that center. As human beings, we're still growing and evolving. So quite often people will meet a religious faction, political ideas, they buy into that belief, they give their power into something outside themselves. So in the center is like being open to life, but holding yourself without giving your power away. Like many people say, well, I got in a relationship with this person and I lost myself in the relationship. Or I got into this job and I got so focused in that I lost my center. I became sidetracked, I lost what I was really here to do. So that's the fifth agreement. Let me just do the best I can do without resisting. If you're not resisting, you become super conductive. And then take what life gives you. Like, okay, we're struggling. I remember when I was young and we were left Hawaii, had a very mystical life in Hawaii and very creative, very fun, but came over to Phoenix and with my girlfriend and we don't have any money. What are we going to do? Because we ran out of money. So it's Valentine's Day. Well, we'll get a job selling flowers on the corner. So you have to sell flowers. Like, okay, that is enough to get us by. I'll get a part-time job here, do this, do this. It's just a stepping stone to where you need to get. So this is like, all the young people go through that. It's like, we want to have this life, but now we have to do these jobs. These are just stepping stones. And if you don't let your ego get oppressed by it, say, I'm doing the best I can while I'm there, because then I'm going to the next. If you're always doing the best you can do and you always adapt to opportunity, like I would get a job that I'm not going to be here, but I'm just going to do my best that I can get on and go to the next step. And so little by little you can create your own reality. There's been people who have had that knowledge but have kept it for their own advantages. You know, the power of positive thinking, how to master your reality by seeing what it is you want to create, how to use positive thought, how to program the subconscious. There's different ways of using the mind to create success. The one thing is taking away the negative programming. A lot of the mystery schools, people have had that knowledge. So learning how to clear the body from these kind of thought forms, learning how to clear the subconscious program and put a positive program in there. So then we align the subconscious mind with the conscious mind and then to the superconscious. That's what the shamanic people, the medicine people have done through history. So we have to work with the body wisdom, but also the sky wisdom. We also have a higher mind knowing. The universal mind is our mind. We have these little blinders on that we think we're just in this here, but in reality, it's all coming from the universal mind. And the more we awaken, the more we become a conduit for this wisdom, also for the mind of the Mother Earth. Today, because of the time we're in, many people are awakening. Many people have, before they were born, agreed that this lifetime that they're going to wake up. When I was a young fellow, there was not that much out. You know, there was some books out, but there was some stuff out. But you know, here we are 40 years later, and everywhere you go, it's like yoga and astrology and spirituality and the angels. And the problem is that there's so much information out now that we are living in duality. So there are forces of goodness that are guiding us. There are some that are trying to sabotage us, negative forces. And those forces try to get into anything that has power. Get into our politics, corrupt our politicians. Get into our money, into the greed and corrupt people. Get into our music, break everything up. Like the idea of the GMO food, you know, the pharmaceutical drug industry controlling things. There are things going on that, like, who's making those choices? And why are people going along with that? Because they're just following, they don't think for themselves. Many people have been renunciates. Like, I reject all that, I'm just going to find the spirit, and I'm living in the mountain, or I'll take a vow of poverty, like this kind of thing. And I believe we lived many lifetimes. And I think in the past, many of us have done that kind of a thing already. So now how do we bring it into the everyday world and be everyday people, master our everyday lessons? That we have to see our everyday challenges as like what life gives us. You know, this is what the Spirit is teaching us, our challenges. When we master those challenges, that's the Great Spirit teaching us. We're poisoning our water, our soil, poisoning our air. Let's go natural. If enough people begin to realize that that's the message, don't poison the Mother Earth, and why we need to make a shift from an economy that's serving only a small percentage of people at the top and maintaining a way that's breaking down the natural order of things. But you know, there's been like a Tesla fellow came out a long time ago. He had already developed free energy systems, and a lot of that's been a threat to the system, so they've been blocking it. So we have a lot of stupidity running the world, a lot of greed. I think it was the Lord Jesus said, what it is if you gain the world, what is it if you gain the world but you lose your soul? So some people are their greed are losing their soul because they're selfish and they're a part of something that is not serving the spirit of life. And then people, they get a voice, they get into a position of power, they want to do something good, and then, I got to conform because if I don't, I'm going to lose my financing. So our whole system is kind of corrupt because they have big money buying the politicians before they can even be elected in the campaigns. So now we got politicians say, I'm not going to accept any of that big packed money, so I can keep my voice for the people. I think it's very, very easy to begin to take student debt off the young people, but once they graduate, that they can do community service to pay it back. Instead of being in debt, they start working in health clinics, they start working, they give back that way until they can start to earn money and not be in debt. There can be some level of investing into people so that everybody has an opportunity. And then the people who are the best can rise to the top, and then they give back, on some level give back. The people especially the young people, are awakening. They want new choices, new energy technologies, new ways of doing business. Take the plastics out, take the chemicals out, get out of the pharmaceutical drugs, get into the natural healing. This understanding is starting to awaken in the young people. People are starting to discuss more positive options. And it's not just about the money, because I think a lot of people are going like, the money system's corrupt anyway, so how do we transition from a corrupt financial system to where people can be motivated to achieve and yet not be trapped in poverty? They can not be given handouts, but somehow earn their way up. Ultimately, you have to make your own choices. But you can learn by example. And this is what we're missing now, is that we're missing wisdom keepers and elders to help guide the people, because we can see how foolish our world politics is, our world leaders are. If you cut down all the trees and poison the rivers and the fish die and the plants that are growing, the food, you're contaminating the food, you can't eat your gold and silver. But today it's all about, you want security, buy gold and silver so you can retire. But Native people have been saying for over 100 years, it's like, you can't eat that. If you're not taking care of the Mother Earth, if you're not keeping your water clean, if you're not connecting with the life force of the earth. I've always been fascinated by prophecies. Back in the late 70s, I was having my awakening, and I didn't have any wise teachers, elders to really fill me in on what's going on, so I started to study a lot. One of the biggest voices that was happening was a guy called Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce was called the sleeping prophet. He was a Baptist minister, and somehow he began to go into trance and began to give a lot of information from his higher self, from his past life, a higher self that he was speaking through him. So Edgar Cayce was very famous. He talked about the end of the age, He talked about California being part of it reclaimed by the ocean, turning into islands, and the whole big shift of the earth axis. And in the 90s, a guy named Gordon Michael Scallion came out. He had a sickness, and in his crisis, he had an awakening. He started having visions, and he started seeing the earth changing and the axis shifting and the oceans coming back to Sedona. The ocean has been in Sedona. On the edge here, we were the coast of North America, we were the coast once upon a time, and he saw it happening again, the whole earth shifting on its surface. One day, this earth is going to go off its axis, and these waves are going to come. Before this big wave comes, we're already going to have an awakening. We're going to have a shift. The idea of an earth actually shifting big tidal waves is very frightening. There's nothing more intimidating than thinking that the earth is going to go totally out of control, and it's going to take out all the people living on the coastlines are going to get taken off because of the waves. Kind of like a Noah and the Ark kind of a thing happening again. So they told me to speak of love and inspiration, so it took me a long time to come to understand what that's really about. Because as I began to look at the world, I started to see all the corruption in the world. And it's like, how do you speak of love and inspiration when there's so much corruption going on? And how do you have love and inspiration when it's going to go through a big upheaval with the earth cataclysm? Always I looked at that timing, and I always would pray, give us more time because we have not awakened up yet. There's not enough of us awake. Give us more time so everybody can wake up. And as we wake up, we can shift the dream. Because we think we're living in a solid reality. This is just atoms and molecules vibrating. We're really in a dream here now. It can shift. This dream can shift once we wake up. The Great Awakening is awakening from the dream. So looking at prophecy like I have, I studied a lot of prophecy, a lot of different cultures. For the Toltec wisdom says that a 26,000 year cycle. We can divide that by 4. 4 cycles of 6,500 years. So you go back 2 cycles, you got 13,000 years ago. 13,000 years ago dates when the Ice Age ended. There was like some major melt-off took place, and an extinction level event took place over North America. We lost the saber-toothed tiger, we lost the woolly mammoth, we lost the camel, the horse became extinct in North America. The African lion lived here, the cheetah, the giant sloth. There was a bear that was way larger than the polar bear. all those got extinct at that time. And what caused the ice age to make this big shift? The theory is like, the sun flared and a heat wave hit the earth and melted things down. More progressive researchers are saying there's more to it than just that. Many of us believe that we were hit by either a meteorite or comet. Fragments of a meteorite or a comet hit us. So if you have an impact, it puts a dust and debris cloud, the fires that are burning the land, all that turns to fire, all that goes into the atmosphere, blocks out the sun. The heat wave hit the planet, and to survive, it was not an easy thing. That was an astronomical event. Astronomical events happen from time to time that can be devastating, so the people had to go to safety, underground, etc. So there are these stories of migrations when the earth is going through changes and also going underground to survive. And today there's been a lot of investigations around the inner earth. These stories are echoed in Native American teachings of coming from the inner earth and coming out. So some of those places were safety from destruction on the surface. Others were actual access down even further into the earth, where there was said to be different realities coexisting down there, maybe different dimensions. So like talking about this time of change, as enough people awaken, we are changing the timelines of how our future prophecies are unfolding. Prophecy around the world is mirroring each other's teachings. This great awakening is a prophecy by all the ancient cultures. And so the prophecy speaks of a great awakening, a great healing, but also the warning. The Hopi speak of the world being out of balance, that we're going more extreme out of balance. They talked about these are what you're going to see. You're going to see spider webs in the sky. So we have all these chemtrails now. They speak about the blackness in the water, oil being spilled in the water. Other even people speak about the black snake, which is like the pipelines breaking and poisoning the land. So they're seeing these things, and there can be a difficult time with the system if it breaks down. And you can look at all the possibilities of what happens if the grid goes down, there's no electricity, what happens with natural disasters. Look at all the criminals, and do you have a gun to protect yourself? Do you have food supplies? Do you have that mentality? A lot of people go like get fear-based, like, oh shit, it's gonna hit the fan. Like, and how are we gonna prepare? There's a lot of anxiety that's pushing people like, oh, now we're anxious about the end of the world. The Hopis say it, the Christians say it, the Muslims say it, everybody says it. But also it's being said that there's gonna be this great awakening, to have no fear, because you're gonna be awakened and set free. So I have a great love for Jesus. I just don't like what Christianity has done with his teachings. It's a shell game. The truth has been mixed up, and religions are fighting with each other. The true religion is love. What I think is going to happen, my idea, the Toltec have said that the sun is going to shift into the new sun. 2012, the old cycle came to a peak. It hit its high point. As the one's going down, the other one's coming up. Here comes now the new ideas, the free energy technology, the enlightenment consciousness, the global awakening for living in harmony with the Mother Earth, and the shamanic wisdom is waking back up. There was a woman named Dolores Cannon. She did a lot of hypnosis with people, and she stumbled into it. Well, while in hypnosis, the oversoul began to speak through them and tell her information that she was to give out. She spoke of 3 waves of people coming in, that the Earth is coming to this time cycle to make the shift. They volunteered to come in to help lift us up with a higher frequency of love and clarity. So the first wave came in the 60s. It was called the Flower Children. Love and peace, and turn on and drop out, So this awakening took place, but the world was very dense at that time. So many people who came in with these ideals got disillusioned, and many of them who were following that example went back into the materialism of the business world, business as usual, and that's a hippie ideal, and now we're going to go back into the real world. And so the next wave comes. And the next wave, the children are progressively becoming more, not everybody, but the volunteers are coming in to awaken, to bring in this quickening of consciousness. In her hypnosis session, she also talked about people start speaking of the new earth, the 5th dimensional earth. It's called heaven on earth, the 5th dimensional earth. That in the Christian prophecy, a new earth is being prepared for us. That this earth is going to reset itself, and we're going to move into a new earth. That we go through a time of darkness, like 2 or 3 days of darkness, as the sun bursts into the new cycle. Many people have seen the time of darkness. like an eclipse. That may be what it's going to be. It's hard to know for sure about that. There's a belief that we, through our prayers and the help that has raised the frequency of the planet, that we've had intervention has come in from the star people to help buffer our system or buffer our sun so it wasn't too volatile. Because if it was not buffered, we would have already had the big upheavals and the big cataclysms that would have already happened. But they buffered our sun. And so now that the sun has been buffered, that the sun will come through a more gentle frequency, but maybe enough to, again, shift this whole planet. And I think the most important thing I want to say is that many people have had a death experience and come back to talk about it. And they speak about the love and beauty that is on that side. If it's so beautiful, why am I afraid to die? So if it's, I'm going to die, I'm going to go to heaven, let me live my heaven here now. If I live my heaven here now, then whenever that time comes, I'll be ready for it. All I've got to do is the best I can do, not attached to my ego and my ambitions, but doing what's right for me and follow my heart, treat others right, raise my frequency, and when the wave comes, we graduate. It's painless that way. I mean, we already have catastrophes happening. We already have big earthquakes and tidal waves and fires and floods and hurricanes and tornadoes. We already have that and warfare going on. So catastrophe is already happening. But before the big one comes, we're going to make that shift over. So it's all good, nothing to fear, because the only fear we should have is not waking up into love. When you have love, there's no fear. And that's the key. When you have love, there's no fear. So follow your heart, find out what do I love, how can I make my life better, and how does that contribute to other people. And if I follow my heart and we begin to awaken, when the first wave shift comes, we create a new earth. And then those who understand that can go to the next one above that or higher. Because there's many levels of heaven. There's different heaven realms. And the more you realize now, the higher you can go when you leave this 3D.